Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now. Black power.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, it is Monday, May 19, 2025, and I'm Candace Kelly sitting in for Roland Martin. Here is what's coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. The Diddy trial just took a jaw-dropping turn. A former Danity Kane member hit the stand with explosive testimony about shocking abuse and threats. I was on the ground, and we have the latest with what happened inside of the courtroom. Voting rights are under attack. Louisiana's new voter ID law is sparking outrage. Critics say it's built to suppress, not protect. Danielle Lang from TE Campaign Legal Center will explain. And President Biden's cancer diagnosis is hitting home, especially for Black men. We're talking with a top urologist about what metastatic prostate cancer means and why it is a major wake-up call for our health. Plus, deadly tornadoes rip through the Midwest, devastating communities in Missouri. Former St. Louis Mayor Tishaura Jones joins us live to talk about the damage, the response, and what recovery looks like. It's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the fine. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, y'all. It's Roland Martin, Rolling with Roland now. He's funk, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
All right, folks, a powerful storm in St. Louis has caused $1 billion in damages. The storm hit more than 4,400 buildings. At the height of the storm, over 100,000 residents lost power, 5 people have been confirmed dead, and dozens more were hospitalized with injuries. As of noon this past Sunday, some 36,000 customers were still without electricity. Despite 1,900 workers on the ground, restoring power has been a huge challenge, with nearly 300 power poles down. Joining us now is the former mayor of St. Louis, Missouri, Tishaura Jones. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
So can you describe a little bit about what's going on the ground right now? What does it look like to you when you hit the streets?
Yes, so I have been out in community for the last 3 days since the storm hit. My neighborhood, it took a direct hit as well. I've been out without power up until last night, and there are still hundreds or thousands of people still without power. And what I have seen as I drive around the community and as I am helping people dig out of this horrendous storm is that we still need more help and that the need is vast. And so the city is doing its coordination with other departments regionally and nationally. And where I have chosen to focus my efforts as the former mayor of this city is trying to make sure that no one falls through the cracks and what are those gap services that we can provide. So I have been working with Action St. Louis on the ground as we do resource distribution, as we raise money to help people get through this, because we know that most of the storm hit majority Black and brown communities, actually majority Black communities. And a lot of those communities are not going to have the resources they need to recover after this tornado.
So what are you expecting something in terms of what the president can do and those with the executive powers can do at this time? What is that looking like?
Well, we had a tornado back in March, and President Trump still has not issued an emergency declaration from that. So, we don't expect him to act with urgency to issue an emergency declaration for this storm. So we have to mobilize and organize and make sure that we have our communities back. And that's exactly why why I'm coming on here tonight, to let people know how they can help the Black community in St. Louis recover from this deadly tornado.
All right, let's talk about that a little bit more. What can people do? You said that that you already have a couple of thousand people on the ground. That is not enough. But what can people who are watching tonight do for your community?
Well, first and foremost, they can contribute to Action St. Louis, and I will send you a link where people can contribute to Action St. Louis, and they are providing direct resources to communities. So we are collecting all sorts of supplies, cleaning supplies, construction supplies, plywood, wheelbarrows, whatever we can get our hands on to make sure, and then deploy that out into the community. We're working with AmeriCorps to make sure that we can put together a database of people that still need help, and then we will continue to call on our people who have expertise in construction to help rebuild roofs, to help tarp roofs. So we are boots on the ground, making sure that we are that no one falls through the cracks. And so we have been stationed at a local YMCA. If people are familiar with St. Louis, the O'Fallon Park YMCA, on a daily basis, just to make sure that there is somewhere that people can come and let us know what they need, and then we will also deploy the resources within those communities.
And what are you finding are the needs that residents are coming to you the most? What are people saying on the ground when you talk to them?
Well, a lot of people are still without power, and we realize that our utilities are working around the clock to restore power. The biggest need is repairs to homes, and what happens when you don't have access to power. So our seniors, our disabled, will also need housing as we continue as we try to rebuild their apartments, their homes. You know, in the Black community, and especially in St. Louis, we have an old housing stock, an old beautiful housing stock. You know, 4 sides brick. 3 layers of brick in some of these homes. And so bricks are everywhere on the ground. And so we are picking up and salvaging what we can, but it also makes rebuilding very, very difficult and very expensive. We are trying to make sure that we can shore up the homes where we can. Again, there are other storms that are expected later on in the week. And so just making sure that people have what they need to ride this out. And then we'll also pivot to talk about other financial resources that we can raise money for to help them survive or recover from this storm.
And what is your advice to people in your community? Because as you said, you just did not recover yet from the past storm. Now, a situation where more storms could potentially be coming. What do you tell your residents, your community, in terms of preparing for what is possibly to come?
What I'm telling everybody is to make sure that you have some people who will have your back, and so you're not taken advantage of. We hope that everyone has insurance, but we realize that many may not and may need help rebuilding their homes. And in some cases, those homes may not be able to be rebuilt. We are talking about a community that has been neglected for at least 70 plus years. And so rebuilding is going to be very difficult, but we want to be a part of the solution and provide as many resources as necessary. And that's why we are asking people everywhere across the country to donate to Action St. Louis. That way we know that resources will get directly to the people in need that need it most.
Action St. Louis, when we talk about a timeline, what you're doing to help people in terms of people going back to work and school and getting on their way, what's the outlook in terms of, I know that possible recovery isn't going to happen fully for any time soon, but what is the timeline for what your hopes are?
You know, we're probably going to be in recovery mode for, several months because our public transportation system also took a direct hit. So just when I was picking my son up from the airport last night, I saw our crews out trying to fix our train system or our Metrolink system. People's cars were buried under trees, and so they're going to need transportation to work. You're going to have people without work because their businesses were also decimated through the storm. So recovery is going to be very, very long and very arduous and very difficult for a lot of people. So anybody within the sound of my voice, we need all of the resources that we can to help this community recover from this horrible once-in-a-lifetime storm because a tornado hasn't hit this part of our community since 1959.
Now, in terms of the monies that you're asking for, where will it go directly? How will it serve the community?
So Action St. Louis has been buying supplies for people, buying water, food, construction supplies, and literally we set up shop where people can come pick them up. We also work with other organizations to deploy them in communities. For the construction materials, for example, we're working with a couple of organizations and labor unions and collecting addresses to make sure that those who need construction on their homes, or it needs some shoring up, that we are deploying units or volunteers to help shore up these people's homes. So that's what the money's going for. When you donate to Action, that money goes directly into the community.
I know that people can lose hope during these times. What is the sense from the people that you're talking about their outlook, how they're feeling about St. Louis, Missouri, especially when more storms could potentially be coming?
The one thing that I have seen as I have been in the community since the storm hit is the resiliency of our community. People are really pulling together, and it's such a beautiful thing. As I was on the street helping one of my former staffers with his home, people, drove by or walked by with water, with food, with snacks, because they realize that, once you're working and you just don't stop to eat or to stay hydrated. So our community is really coming together, and it's such a beautiful thing. And also, what I want people to know is that we will rebuild. We are a resilient community, and we are coming together during this storm to help each other, to help our neighbors, to help our friends and family. So I am very, very hopeful that we will rebuild our community after this horrible storm, because we are going to come together and roll our sleeves up and help our neighbors and friends rebuild.
All right, Tishaura, I want you to one more time just mention how people can give you donations in order to help your community before we leave tonight.
So Action St. Louis is a nonprofit, and you can find them on ActBlue. So if you go to actblue.com, you can search for Action St. Louis for their 501c3. They're a nonprofit, and donate there. And we will welcome any size donation from $1 to whatever you can afford. We realize that these are tough times for everybody, but we are asking people to keep us in your prayers, but also if they can help us out, help us recover, and help our community recover, we would greatly appreciate it.
All right, Tishaura Jones, the former mayor of St. Louis, Missouri, thank you for letting us know. Our hopes and prayers are with you, and I'm certain that people will donate to help you in what's to come. Thank you again. Good to see you.
Yeah, thank you. God bless.
All right, folks, we're going to be back after break, so stay with us. We've got the latest on all of the headlines that you want to hear about, including that Sean Combs trial. Stay with us.
This week on A Balanced Life, we are getting real about mother wounds. While May is the month that we shower mom with love, for some people, this time of year is a stark reminder of fractured relationships and feelings of abandonment. In this episode, we will be uncovering the trauma of mother wounds and sharing tips on how we can begin to heal them.
What we don't talk enough about in our community is giving ourselves permission to even heal.
That's all next on A Balanced Life here on Black Star Network.
Hey, what's up? Geek Tony in the place to be. Got Kicked Out Your Mama's University, creator and executive producer of Fat Tuesdays, an air hip-hop comedy. But right now, I'm rolling with Roland Martin, unfiltered, uncut, unplugged, and undamn believable. You hear me?
All right, I want to welcome our panel tonight. I am joined by Dr. Julianne Melvo, economist and president emerita of Bennett College and author of Surviving and Thriving, 365 Facts in Black Economic History. She's out of Washington, D.C. Also joining us tonight, former Georgia State Representative Renita Shannon out of Atlanta, Georgia. And finally, Dr. Omekongo Dibinga, senior lecturer in the School of International Service at American University and author of Lies About Black People, How to Combat Racism. He is out of Washington, D.C. I want to start with the good doctor. Dr. Dibinga, how are you doing tonight?
I'm great. How are you?
I am doing well. Listen, I just wanted to talk to you about these storms, your take on really what the president and his office should be doing at this time. It seems to me that he steps up in other places that need money, but some reason not St. Louis.
Well, you know, whenever your citizens are struggling, just go bring some so-called farmers in from South Africa and set them up with housing and jobs and everything else that they need. I mean, this is disgraceful. During the last Trump administration, I remember listening to Black mayors across the country who said when Atlanta, other places, when Trump was mayor, was president, we were on our own. And it seems like that's repeating itself right now. And one of the things I'm wondering also is, with the firings that they're doing in places like NOAA and the like, they're getting rid of overnight forecasters and, where there's signs of a hurricane that were coming that were missed because of what they were doing with Elon Musk's department, that maybe some people could have got early warning signs and maybe evacuated and the like. So on some levels, their ignorance and budget cuts are making these storms worse. And then the people are not getting help on the other side of it. And it's also sad that, to be quite honest, like I've heard stories about the hurricanes and the like, but I haven't seen this on any other network. I haven't seen anyone talk about it in March except us. I haven't seen anyone talk about it in recent days in terms of the lack of assistance that these people are getting. People just talk about hurricane blew through town, certain people died, people have no power, and that's about it. And this is how the president gets over. We expect Trump to do what he does, but Trump has been known to bow when the pressure becomes strong enough. And if people aren't reporting on these things, then there can't be any pressure. And so people need to get this word out. We need to spread that website to help people get the funds. But this is going to be the case for the next 4 years. How do I know that? Because it was the case for the last 4 years. There's nobody coming to save us but us. It's tragic. More attention needs to be drawn to it. And his hands need to be forced in order to help serve our people. We can't just give up, but we have to call it out.
And Dr. Dubinga, you are so right. I spoke to a couple people today. I said, have you really heard about this storm? They said, no, I absolutely knew nothing about it, which is incredible because of the number of media outlets that we have that are out there, not traditional, but also online. Representative Shannon, I wanted to ask you this about the responsibility of the politicians to jump in here. I haven't heard a lot about that either.
Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously, it's the responsibility of the elected officials to help lead folks through traumatic events and through events like this that really, rock the foundation of the residents that live in the places that have voted for them, their constituents, essentially. But this does, so that's kind of the role of the elected officials to speak up for their communities and say what their communities need. Even though she's the former mayor, Mayor Jones just told us what the community needs. She's still pretty much serving as an elected official, even though she's not currently in office. So she's doing what she needs to do. The folks who are currently active and elected need to be doing the same. But I would add the larger point is that this is really the place where the federal government really needs to step in with assistance. And so I would argue that Trump is not only just trying to screw black folks, he screws his own. Don't forget that Sarah Huckabee Sanders, governor of Arkansas, recently had to fight the Trump administration when her state needed help because of a climate disaster, and they were denied. So all of the cuts that you hear about, whether it's cutting the National Weather Service, whether it's saying that they're going to take down FEMA and cuts to FEMA, and all of these services that are that collectively support the country and everyone. And folks in different states, all of those services really, you don't realize how much these things really matter until you need them. It's almost like insurance. You don't care about that support until you need that support.
Dr. Malveaux, I'm sure no surprise to you.
He's taking FEMA apart, and FEMA would be the agency that would respond from this. So as Renita has said, you don't know what you need until you don't need it. People don't know that we need FEMA until FEMA is there. I was in Grenada over the weekend celebrating Malcolm X's mother. And I was with a brother, Mike Rogers, who's a big corporate deal in St. Louis. And he was spending most of his time, he's supposed to be with us, on the phone trying to figure out what was going on. And one of the things one of the other brothers said is, this isn't on the internet. Most of us get our news these days through, CNN, PBS, da-da-da. This is not a big deal for those people who choose to ignore it. So while I'm not holding all media responsible, I'm wondering where your lens goes and why. And why that lens does not go to predominantly Black communities. Renita's right. It's not that, this is not a racial thing, but basically the lens shifts. How do you get some motley white South Africans who people are saying Well, they were discriminated against because someone tried to take their land. Well, where in the you know what did they get the land from? It's not, it wasn't their land.
Right. And there you have it. You know, like you said, it is a problem bigger than we know. A lot of it does have to be do with the media because we just don't know what's going on. And our algorithms don't take us to these types of stories. I'm certain that a lot of people will donate to the cause. All right, the people, I want to move on. I want to talk about Sean Combs because today began the second week of testimony in the Sean Combs sex trafficking trial. Former Danity Kane member Dawn Richare was back on the stand facing defense attorneys who questioned her credibility, citing inconsistencies in her statements and her continued work with Combs after the alleged incident that she talked about. Richare sued Combs last year, accusing him of groping, assaulting, and imprisoning her, and threatening her life when she defended Ventura. She also sued for unpaid wages. What also came out on Friday on Richare's first day of testifying was that Combs's lawyers filed to have her lawsuit dismissed. Finally, on the witness stand today was Cassie Ventura's former best friend, Carrie Morgan. She described instances of being allegedly abused by Combs. Dr. Malveaux, I want to start with you. I know your feelings about this trial. I know you say, listen, we've got a lot more important things to think about than this trial. But I think that there is some importance in terms of having eyes on the justice system, especially when people of color are involved. Yeah, I know that people have been in your ear, even if you haven't been following it yourself. What is your take so far on what you think is happening?
Well, I think that Oma Congo called me on my stuff the last time we were here together because I said I don't care about it. And frankly, I still don't. What I care about is the misogynoir. I care about the fact that Black women are too often sidelined and Black men are too often excused. I would like to have 30 minutes, maybe even 10, with that man in a small room with an ugly stick. So I could just, knock him into next week. Ask him, I know your mama didn't raise you like this, boy. I know that you did, and anyway, neither here nor there. I can't deal with the particulars of this because it's layered, but I can deal with the societal impact of this because it's important. How are Black women and girls, because, some of these people are girls, they're 14. How are they introduced to the music business? Who gives them a pass? Who closes their eyes when they see a predator hitting on a little girl and having sex with her in a room with all that bottle of baby oil and stuff? Don't get me started.
Well, I think you already started. I do want to say, listen, in this particular case so far, we are talking about adults. The question becomes, Dr. Dibinga, consenting adults. And that really is the question on the table here, whether Cassie Ventura, whether the other victims actually consented to this, or was this just as the defense attorneys and all the are painting that, listen, these were two drug addicts in a bad relationship and people have all been there. What are your thoughts about this?
Well, look, as somebody who's been in the game in terms of, rapping and putting out albums and touring and things like that, I'm familiar with how cutthroat the industry is and how people have had to do incredible things to advance themselves. And I think that that's a big part of this. I think that this idea that these were just people who were just, cold drug addicts or whatever they said, who just love parties, I think it's nonsense. R. Kelly is an R&B figure, right? So Diddy is really the first person in hip hop to really suffer the consequences of the Me Too movement. Me Too movement skipped over rappers. And it really bothered me that a lot of these guys were not called to task like some of these other guys, the Weinsteins, the Bill Cosbys and all of that. This is a moment for us to really reflect. I personally, do not believe that Cassie and these guys are lying and making up stuff and just trying to get attention. I don't believe in any of that. I believe at the end of the day that Diddy has always been a violent person. I believe that this is a person who inside himself is a small person. And so has always had a need to dominate and control people. And he's not the only one in hip hop. We come out of a culture, particularly those of us who are part of that hip hop generation. If we go back and listen to the music, a lot of the stuff, a lot of it was about sex and relationships with underage people. You know, BBD, Do Me Baby, Backstage, Underage, Adolescent, how you doing? LL Cool J, Big Ol' Butt. I was down at the high school, whatever. Like, we came out of this culture. And a lot of us were too young to understand what was going on. We danced to it. Now we're older. We're parents, aunties, uncles, or whatever. And now we need to be part of the group that's going to hold our community accountable. So I'm hoping that it all comes out. I hope that there's not any particular glitches or whatever that leads to some form of mistrial, because this story needs to be told. And it's chilling hearing all of the stories, but at the same time, I'm glad that these stories are coming out so we can know so much of this behind the scenes stuff about the growth of hip hop that people just don't know about.
Dr. Domingo, I want to stay with you for one moment, especially because you have been in the industry. You know, in court, there were many emails where Cassie Ventura looks like she did want to participate. And I know that can be explained in many different ways. People get themselves in bad relationships and often do things for their partners they don't want to do. Does it extend to this for the normal average person? Probably not. But for her, this was the threshold. And of course, there were times where she said she was abused. I'm just wondering, if you were on that jury, would that make a difference to you that there were, in fact, some texts where she said, hey, I am ready for a freak off and I love you, or she was doing drugs on her own, or she would call male escorts after they left on her own? All of that did come out from her own mouth. And I'm wondering just how you feel about, especially, again, being part of the industry.
Well, look, people have to understand. I mean, look at the age difference between, you know, Cassie and Diddy. Look at her career trajectory as it relates to their relationship. And like, I hope that the people who are prosecuting Diddy are doing a good job. I haven't watched every ounce of the trial, are doing a good job of helping people understand the pressures that a lot of these young women particularly go through to be part of the industry. And so my hope is that these people on the jury will look at the scale. My hope of what he did versus what she may have done afterwards. I hope that they will have people who are trauma and abuse experts who can speak about things like Stockholm syndrome and how people may feel attached, you know, to their captor. I'm somebody who's also worked internationally in the field of sex trafficking. And so I understand what it's like for somebody to feel like, and people say, well, she was a singer, she was famous. It doesn't matter. I know exactly, I've seen what it's like for people to feel like they have to be under the thumb of somebody, even when that person is not around. And so regardless of what she may have done here and there, there's a larger network of issues that she, as far as I can tell, was a victim to. And so I'm hoping that the jury can indeed see through that, but it's up to the prosecution to make sure that that is happening.
Representative Shannon, before I get to you, I just wanted to share with folks that, you know, going into the courtroom and seeing Sean Combs all gray. I mean, the pictures and the sketches that you see, they are a fair representative. I say that it's actually slightly worse in person. All gray, probably lost about 20 pounds with his glasses. At times he reads the Bible. He's, he's thanks to everybody who was in there, and he watches everything and he takes notes. The public is overnight there at 3 p.m., 6 p.m. lining up, especially during the time of Cassie. Today, it wasn't that bad. But there's just a lot of talk in the courtroom, outside of it rather, about, what could happen. And I think that a lot of this just has to do with who is telling the better story. And like Dr. Dominguez said, we need somebody to contextualize this, because why did she stay in this relationship for 11 years? Representative Shannon, what are people talking about in your circles?
Well, I think that people are really shocked that this is really such a complex case, because it is really complicated. I think a lot of people thought that this was going to be a case very similar to the R. Kelly case, where it was almost pretty clear what was happening, that he was, keeping folks, holding folks hostage for the purpose of sex, and making people do things completely against their will almost the entire time. This case has become very complex because through testimony, we do know that Cassie said that in the beginning, things were consensual. She did want to do these things because she did not want him to leave her. So that, I think the prosecutors have the job of basically figuring out, okay, since everybody admits that at some point this was consensual, when did it become coercion? You got to establish that timeline. I've been keeping up with the case, and what I'm seeing is that they're doing a great job of outlining these state charges. I'm seeing almost every day plenty of things where they're proving that he's guilty of state charges, but they haven't made the full link for those federal sex trafficking charges and all of that. And I think that it's becoming complicated because of the text messages where they are showing where she said that she wanted to do some of these things. And so it's just become a very, very complicated case. But overall, I would say there's a lot that can be learned from this. I think about, how folks sort of push back on what they would call, being woke and some of the newer values that have really entered our society. And one of them is really conversations about consent. Folks will push back about, not that, consent is woke. It's like, well, consent is a thing that you understanding consent and how consent actually works is the thing that can keep you out of jail. And I think that Puff Daddy, he's seeing that right now, which is that what you may cast aside as just woke garbage or BS has nothing to do with you, is actually the thing that separates you and being in jail.
Yeah. So I want to give a little insight. Today I was in court. Dawn Rashard, she took the stand. She was a former member of the band Danity Kane and was on the reality show Making the Band. I was very interested because she was a corroborating witness to say, hey, I did see Cassie be put in these dangerous situations where she was beat, she was struck, and she did make her point to some extent in terms of her being punched at a table in front of different employees and ushers, who was even out to dinner, being punched right there at the dinner table. But when Cross came, they really put a lot of holes in her story, asking about specificity. Did she see Sean Combs hitting Cassie with a frying pan, as she was making eggs one morning? And so she went back and forth. And I'm afraid that on Cross, you could look at the jury, and the jury was not having it. They did not take her as a credible witness. And it was very difficult just to sit there and think, okay, wait, what was true, what wasn't true, because she did seem to change her story. She said she answered it to all the questions to the best of her ability, but it certainly didn't come out very well. All right, anybody want to give a final comment on this Sean Combs trial? Is that going to be you, Dr. Malvo?
It can be. One of the things I think is important here, obviously, the prosecution has proven that this man is a horrible human being who hits women, who coerces people. And the question is consent. The question is, because he had all this money, so he could manipulate people. But at what point were you complicit in your own oppression? And I think that's what the jury is going to have to grapple with. I mean, did you choose to get your behind beat because you thought you were going to get a record deal? As I said, I'm an elder. I look at this bit and I shake my head. But I also say that people should not be coerced. Their livelihood should not be placed on the line, which it appears to have been done here. And those like Obakongo, who know more about the music industry than me, are better qualified to talk about it. But I would just say this stinks. I don't know if it's a federal case, but certainly it's a case of some sort. And Black folks, I was with a bunch of people, multi-generational. And I had a couple of folks say, well, did she choose to do that? We have to start looking critically at the people we lift up. If nothing else, nobody ever needs to buy another Diddy, whatever again. Record, boy, just go find a small hole to sit in. Could be the jail, but it could be your mama's house.
You said mama has a lesson. Listen, this was a federal case. I want to say that. You mentioned her record deal. She had a 10-record deal. She had one record come out of that lengthy relationship, be it personal or professional. And I want to say this before I throw to break, that I do think they have made the case that he did cross someone over state lines for the purposes of prostitution. That is the lowest charge. So in terms of the jail time he would get, it's up to 10 years. But I do think that they are actually going to say, and so far have proven, prosecution and defense, all right, we'll give that up. We are kind of conceding to that. He did cross state lines for purposes of engaging sex and paying for that sex. All right, we're going to be keeping more up with more on that here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. And those of you who are watching, stay with us. We've got more of the headlining news after the break. We'll be right back.
On the next Get Wealthy with me, Deborah Owens, have you ever had $1 million idea and wondered how to bring it to life? Well, it's all about turning problems into opportunities. On our next Get Wealthy, you'll learn of a woman who identified the overload bag syndrome, and now she's taking that money to the bank through global sales in major department stores.
And I was just struggling with 2 or 3 bags on the train. And I looked around on the train and I said, you know what? There are a lot of women that are carrying two or 3 bags.
That's right here on Get Wealthy, only on Black Star Network.
I'm Russell L. Honoré, Lieutenant General, United States Army retired, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
All right, Louisiana is at the center of a voting rights fight. A new lawsuit is taking aim at a controversial new state law, Senate Bill 436, that now requires proof of citizenship just to register to vote. We're talking about birth certificates, passports, other documents of proof